So you want to earn some gold, huh? Well, you've come to the right place, because today I'm going to take you along on my journey to get from 0 to 1 million gold in Sea of Thieves. And when I say 0, I really mean 0. Even if I were to spend every last piece of gold in my pocket, I still have access to a bunch of voyages that make earning gold very easy. So of course, I'm doing this on a brand new account. The only thing newer than that account is the brand new instant ramen from gamersubs.gg, sponsor of today's video. And I know what you're thinking, Gamersubs? Don't they make energy drinks? Trust me, I was thinking the same thing. But as soon as I got my hands on these bad boys, they replaced every other instant ramen in my household. And not only because I get them for free. The flavors are bold and delicious, the noodles are perfectly chewy whilst retaining plenty of soup, and it is the ideal snack I can make in a hurry while sailing to an outpost. They come in beef, chicken, and vegetable flavor, and now curry flavors on the menu as well. Beef is definitely my personal favorite though. And the best part, you can save 10% on your entire order across the whole website simply by going to gamersubs.gg/Cliff or using code Cliff at checkout. You can also just follow the link in the description below. Also, as a Gamersubs partner, I get a kickback anytime you buy anything via my link. So make sure to bookmark it if you want to support my channel. Thanks a bunch to Gamersubs for partnering up with me, and now I've got 1 million gold to collect. Actually, this is day 2 of my challenge. During the first one, we spent our time collecting coin in order to purchase our own vessel as well as an emissary flag. But in the spirit of this challenge, I did end up spending any and all gold I had left over after purchasing these 2 things, so that we begin day 2 on a flat 0 once again. Our first course of action was leveling up our emissary flag. Since we opted for the Order of Souls as our faction of choice, our prime directive will be to collect as many skulls as possible to level up our flag. And once it hits rank 5, we can sell all of them with a 150% bonus to their original value. Now my plan was to knock out regular skeleton hunting voyages until I eventually hit rank 5, but I immediately got a little distracted. Oh, would you look at that? Did I just spot a money-making opportunity? Accept the quest? Okay, the Skull of Siren's Song might be the only skull currently in the game that does not benefit from an Order of Souls emissary flag, but it's selling for 50,000 gold was reason enough for me to pursue it when the opportunity arises. But first, I wanted to complete the quest that I came here for before dedicating more time to that distraction. I decided to really take my time with this because remember, the Skull of Siren's Song quest is a competitive voyage, and I wanted to make sure that I remain uncontested when trying to collect it. By the time I was done hunting the Skelly Captains, nobody else had turned up to dig up either key or chest for the voyage, so I felt like it was pretty safe for me to collect them. Well, at least so I thought, until I realized that other players weren't the only thing that could stand in my way. Alrighty. Oh no, oh no. No! No! Please, Rare! My 50k! Oh my god, Rare. Why is that still a bug? Nothing quite like an item getting stuck in your boat. In hindsight, this truly was the Harbinger, a sign to show that the free farm of yore was no longer. Any attempt of retrieving the key was futile, and at the end, all I could do was scuttle my boat to get it unstuck. The one thing was very obvious. The investments we made in day 1 were absolutely worth it. Being able to sell my treasure at the Sovereigns thanks to our captained vessel made selling loot an absolute breeze, and the bonus that came with even just a rank 3 emissary flag was incredible. No longer do we have to walk out treasure to the faction representatives just to make peanuts. We only had just begun our day and already had 50,000 gold pieces in our pockets. The only downside, once my ship respawned, it no longer had the Skull of Siren's Song voyage on the mast, so that whole ordeal ended up being kind of for naught. At least somebody left me a storage crate at Daggertooth Outpost, so I didn't have to start completely from scratch again. Acting like nothing had happened at all, I decided to take on a Skelly fort that spawned just a little ways away from the outpost, seeing how that world event naturally holds a bunch of skulls that would benefit my emissary flag. And I think now would be a good time to talk about this specific world event. For those of you who are new, let me show you like Fortress 101 good practice, okay? Step 1. Park your ship somewhere where you're not in reach of any of the island cannons. So you see this cannon cannot reach me. None of these cannons are facing towards me. Now you think you're in the clear. First one, do not leave your anchor down, because there are kegs in these towers that we want to get rid of. People can just jump to these towers and grab the kegs and sink you. But the lesson ended up being interrupted because there was in fact a Reaper emissary coming my way. Reapers have good reason to attack other emissaries because a conquered flag can sell for a lot of gold, which allows me to transition into another important lesson. The only good place for a gunpowder keg is on an enemy ship. Instead of getting rid of the keg, I decided to swim it over to their ship for a sneaky little surprise attack. They were far away enough as to where I could indulge this play without putting my ship at risk would I fail, though that also meant that I'd have to contend with a few sharks in the water. Unfortunately, that fella was very aware and heard me coming a mile away, which is exactly why I decided to light the cake before getting on his ladder so that even after I was taken out, the barrel would still explode. Now here's the thing, our friend over there decided to not turn back around to fight me and instead headed for Daggertooth. I could just take this as a win and begin clearing the fort, however, this would put me at a risk of him going for a sneaky play of his own. So I decided that my best course of action was to take the fight now whilst he was potentially distracted and while I had nothing of value on my ship to lose, which he did not appreciate because I immediately took a cannonball to the face. We had a real fight on our hands, meaning it was time to lock it in. Oh. Now he's doing to me what I meant to do to him. There we go. As long as we stay cool. There goes his mast again. So he's still spinning. That is unfathomably bad for him. We want to make sure he has as much or more pressure than we do right now. And right now we have a lot of damage. If we can one-ball him one more time, then this is pretty much GG. There we go, there he goes. And we obviously cannot go over right now with all the damage that we have. But we can continue the pressure. The pressure is really important right now. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit that a new player likely would not be able to replicate this scenario. Finding the right balance of bucketing water and taking shots takes a bit of experience, but as long as you listen for the sounds your ship makes as it fills with water, you'll be able to learn how much you can get away with before another bucket is required. And we definitely did not do this for nothing. Our prizes included not only a harpoon rowboat, but also their rank 3 emissary flag, which ended up fetching a very respectable 6,000 gold with the Reaper's bones. And since that potential threat was taken care of, I could finally return to my fort and actually begin clearing it. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that this content is particularly difficult to complete. Really, all you have to do is take out the waves of skeletons until the boss arrives. Occasionally, they will spawn different types of skeletons. The best way with which to deal with them will always be fire. Just be reminded that the same thing applies to you. Some of the mini-bosses drop gold pouches, skulls, and skeleton orders, which you can dig up once you are done with the encounter. A common way to deal with a boss is to simply blast some cannons into his face, just that this one ended up not liking the sound of that. Bruh, come on! He's not letting me do the cheese! Stop hiding! Stop running up there! Oh my god. I know he's going the opposite direction! Don't make this more painful than it needs to be. Yeah, if you think running this guy down with a blunderbuss would have been faster at this point, you might actually be right. Either way, the boss fell eventually, albeit with a little bit more effort than was comfortable, and I was free to collect my treasure. The only problem? I've taken a little too long to complete this fort, allowing a brigantine to catch my scent. Now, I hate to say this, gamers, but if you're a solo slooper, fighting brigantines is very much an uphill battle. All else being equal, bigger ships simply equals more better. And even if individually I was better than these guys, the fact that there's 3 of them meant that I could hold them off only for so long. Day 2 was off to a rocky start, and unfortunately, it was not gonna get much easier. Alright, new server, new ship, new me. We actually had some gold to get supplies this time, and lo and behold, another Skull of Siren Song voyage. After all the setbacks we've experienced, nothing was gonna stop me from cashing this one in. Which of course meant that there was yet another brigantine on the same quest. A smart player would probably cut their losses and do something a little more safe, but the lack of cosmetics on the ship made me feel like maybe I'd be able to win as long as I can catch them off guard. And catch them I did. My assumption was definitely right. These fellas had about as much experience in Sea of Thieves as I have talking to women, with the exception of Twitch chat's mom, of course. Finally, the game stopped giving me its hardest battles and bestowed upon me a free win. It's gonna go for me, isn't it? Of course it is! Okay, maybe not as free of a win as I was hoping. The Megalodon kept knocking me out of my spiral, meaning I could never consistently one-ball these guys to stop them from repairing. But once the Meg gave me a couple of minutes without inviting itself to the party, I could finally deliver the fishing blow. Aha, but of course it was not that simple, because they were also on the quest for the Skull of Siren Song. Their ship spawned very close to mine. The skull was now in my possession, and its turn and location was revealed. If I could sink them one more time, victory would certainly be mine. Their ship ran into the island, giving me a chance to gain the upper hand as soon as I repaired my damage. Except... Bro! No, not again! I hated you. Holy. How am I still alive? If that stationary island cannon had sunk me, I swear I would have rage quit then and there. At that point, I decided that securing the cell was more important than keeping my ship afloat. If they were waiting to ambush me, then my ship would be safe anyway, but if they didn't, that meant there were fewer pirates for me to go through in order to secure the skull. And I mean, bless their hearts, they were whispering in open mics in a language I could not understand, which absolutely gave away their intention. It was a valiant attempt, but don't forget that the Skull of Siren Song is a weapon in itself, and in this case, one that sealed their fate. The 50,000 gold were mine, and both of us decided to go our separate ways. I edged out a victory this time, but just a reminder, we've been several hours into our session and only just made 100,000 gold. For some reason, people just kept coming after me time and time again. Give me a damn break, man! I have 2 items on my ship! I mean, I know that an emissary flag puts a target on your back, but this was unprecedented. And when I managed to win, they never had any treasure on board themselves, meaning I was fighting over nothing. I felt like I spent more time dodging Reaper 5s coming my direction than actually collecting loot. And tell you what, completing sea forts just to immediately sell the handful of skulls you get from them is not exactly an efficient way to make money. Oh yeah, and by the way, do you remember when I told you not to anchor with your sails down, because not only does that make you a sitting duck in case of an attack, but it also shows other players that you are inexperienced? Are you joking? Cut me some damn slack! But the only thing that was cut was me. That's what I get for not following my own advice. At that point, I realized that something was off. Something that, honestly, I hadn't really ever thought about. None of the pirates I fought that day were particularly sweaty or experienced. They merely outnumbered me. But why were they so keen on fighting me? And that's when it dawned on me. My ship. To me, as an experienced player, I don't usually attack ships that don't have cosmetics, because I'm expecting them to be new to the game and not have any significant amount of loot anyway. But for an inexperienced player, seeing somebody even newer than them is one of the few times they might actually edge out a victory in PvP. I mean, we all gotta start somewhere. So in a perhaps counterintuitive twist, I decided to spend some of my gold on a handful of cosmetics just in hopes of getting caught up in fewer battles, so that I can actually earn some money. Minus 60,000 gold later and the Silver Sunset was ready to embark. But you can definitely tell that 6 hours of almost non-stop PvP and resupplying had left its mark. Not a single ship that I sank had any treasure on board, and because of my limited budget, I could not afford to buy new supplies every time I sank. So when I finally got stocked up on the back of a sea fort once again, I decided to take some extreme measures. I'm running on chances. I don't care about the loot I have on board. I'm going when no player ever wants to PvP. You can have this loot, Davy Jones. I will leave this behind, and I will go where no player will ever find me. I was going to the Devil's Roar. Now, the Devil's Roar is such an incredibly obnoxious area of the game that players who like to PvP usually stay away from it. Environmental hazards such as volcanoes would be the biggest problem I'd have to deal with moving forward. But if that was the price I had to pay to make any progress on my challenge at all, then so be it. And boy, was that ever beneficial to my mental well-being. I could finally get my flag to rank 5 without getting sunk. And I even managed to collect a whole bunch of treasure ready for Gold Rush Hour. That's a pro tip, by the way. I know I said I'd get to 1 million without multipliers like Community Weekend or Golden Glory events, but Gold Rush happens twice every single day, increasing the value of everything you sell by 50%. In the 3 hours I spent in the Roar, thanks to the help of Gold Rush Hour, I managed to make a staggering 400,000 gold, just because the Ashen variety of treasure you can find here is usually more valuable than regular loot. But there are even faster ways to make money. Now that we are rank 30 in the Order of Souls, we can really kick this challenge into high gear, because what we're gonna focus doing on day 3 are raids. Now, raids are definitely the new hotness in Sea of Thieves. Introduced in 2024, raids are basically on-demand PvE events that you can dive into. The way they differ from regular world events is that they will award company-specific loot for the faction of your choice, including extremely valuable hero items. And at level 30, you gain access to the Ashen Winds raid. You know what you always get on top of your hero item anyway? The Ashen Winds skull. On a rank 5 emissary, that skull is going to sell for 25,000 gold all on its own, for a world event that you can do on demand and complete in as little as 5 minutes. Though it is worth mentioning that in order to complete the raid, you will have to use the diving mechanic, which will put you on a different server every time, meaning you cannot stack that treasure under normal circumstances. And as fate would have it, I just so happened to be on a very quiet server with a couple Reapers duking it out at the center of the map. When the fog decided to roll up to give me additional cover, I realized that this should be the server on which I level up my emissary flag. Another thing I now had access to was skeleton boss hunting missions. You know, like the one that we found on day 1 from a message in a bottle? These would help me to get my flag to rank 5 to get the most out of my Ashen Winds raids. Except, where is that guy? I genuinely cannot find him. Oh god. And the reason I couldn't find them was because the voyage was bugged. The skeletons were stuck inside a wall and I now had to find a way to get them out. Listen here, I'm showing you this because in a game as massive as Sea of Thieves, it is impossible to avoid bugs altogether. One possible solution is to force the island to reset its spawn by, unaliving yourself in the video game. In my case, that unfortunately did not work, so I had to resort to investing a bunch of cannonballs to take them out via splash damage. After which, we could commence skeleton slaughtering business as per usual. Once I hit rank 5 on my emissary flag, I was ready to sell my treasure so I could begin the actual brunt of my mission, which was diving for Ashen Winds raids. 100,000 gold just during the setup phase? Surely I was in for a hugely profitable day on the seas with nothing that could possibly go wrong. You see what I did there? That's called foreshadowing. Now finally, to the Ashen Winds encounter itself. All you need to complete this raid is a sword and a blunderbuss. You can find food in the barrels, and every single Ashen Winds location also has an ammo box nearby. So what you're gonna want to do is get up close and personal with your blundy as much as you can. When the boss begins to spawn minions, you can zip-zap around to take them out with your sword. All you have to do is hold down block together with your attack button and then hit jump as soon as you hear the swoosh noise to get a massive dash. Once the minions are taken care of, continue blasting your blunderbuss into the boss's big dumb face, and every once in a while he's going to stagger, which gives you an opportunity for more free damage. Really, the only move you gotta watch out for is when he starts summoning fiery boulders from the sky, in which case taking cover is definitely preferable, but thankfully these don't one-shot anymore, so just keep your food close by. Though this ability is why I don't usually use my ship's cannons to defeat him, because I'd rather just worry about how much damage I have taken rather than also worrying about my ship. The reason Ashen Winds is my favorite world event is not only because it is very solo friendly, but also because you can practice it fairly reliably. There is very little on the side of random BS, like a skelly ship blasting you with cursed cannonballs, and you don't need any sort of preparation to complete it quickly, like a keg snack for a skeleton lord. That means how fast you can complete this is entirely up to you, and my own record at present is 3 minutes and 39 seconds as a solo without using ship cannons. Another cool side effect of raids is that, as opposed to the random world event counterpart, they spawn fewer pieces of treasure which are higher value, and all belong to the faction you choose at the time of diving. So rather than a bunch of garbage that is distributed all over the place, I only have to collect a handful of items, all of which will benefit from my emissary flag. Plus, lo and behold, a tier 1 hero item. However, let's not forget that we are still playing on the high seas. Yeah, this server is getting really spicy. Thankfully, all of that is very far away from me. So we're just gonna go sell and sit down. Go to a new server. No problem. I was not gonna get caught with my pants down again. Constantly being attacked on day 2 made me a lot more perceptive, and this time I spotted the danger before it got too close. And as promised, the payoff for choosing the Order of Souls, a 25,000 gold Ashen Wind Skull plus a 12,500 tier 1 hero item. All told, we made about 50,000 gold with a single raid in basically no time flat. And because we don't have to stack a bunch of loot to get to that 50k, we also have the flexibility to dive onto a new server when things get dangerous. Though it is worth mentioning that sometimes the new server is even more dangerous. What? Excuse me? There is literally a Reaper 5 right— It's a brigantine! Are you serious? Yeah, okay, so that is not actually supposed to happen. Raids are not meant to be contested, but somehow the game has dropped me right on top of another ship currently completing said event. Running away was entirely out of the question, and brigantines are way faster than sloops, so I would never be able to build enough distance to be able to dive again. Combat was my only option. Like hell, I'd be handing them my emissary flag on a silver platter just to have to level up a new one. And for a while, it actually seemed like the fight was going in my favor. I had a decent spiral going on, they were immobilized, and I tried to aim for the hatch where they bucket water in hopes of making them bucket it right back into their ship by accident. Though let me make one thing very clear, dear viewer, there is more than one way to be good at Sea of Thieves. Of course, the crazy good PvPers that never miss a shot are of the flashy variety, but that crew, they really knew what they were doing. As I was spinning around, they simply kept repairing damages on the opposite side that I could not reach, meaning I could never stop them from fixing the damage. Okay, their aim might have not been crazy, but it was enough to put a lot of pressure on me as a solo. After a solid like 5 minutes of me dumping about 100 cannonballs into their ship, I realized that I was not winning this fight. I had to back out whilst they were immobile and hope that I dealt enough damage to build the distance necessary to dive away. But of course, it wasn't gonna be that simple. I had to get creative. Anyone that could help. I found another sloop off in the distance fighting a skelly ship, and I mean, what better ally than another small boat to unite against the big boat? Just that they weren't the ones who were about to get involved. Oh, come on, man. Why me? Why are you... It's 3v1 and you're attacking me? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Hey, Sloop, don't know what you're up to, but you're about to have to deal with these guys as well. Good luck. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a win condition. Not every pirate you come across will necessarily be hostile towards you, but unfortunately for me, the Megalodon was more agreeable than that sloop. The brigantine finally caught up to me, and there was a little more I could do than hope for a miracle. Though my hopes were definitely not high when one of these dudes ended up sending me to the ferry without even looking at me. Thankfully, it was not game over yet. Because they were in full-on chase mode, them anchoring my ship actually meant that theirs just zipped right by me. I was given a chance to recover, and all I had to do was get this one guy off my vessel. But as it turned out, I was not destined to fight alone, because where the player sloop left me for dead, the Skelly sloop came to the rescue. And that was all the help I needed. Yeah, come on, Skelly, go get him. One ball. I think, why did they oh, they got anchor ball, that's why. Thank you, Skelly ship. Yeah, exactly, they pick snipes, I can literally just kill them. No, I got anchor balled. Oh god, that's so bad. Oh, and I don't have angle, because of course I don't. He's on. Yeah, you sawed off. Even with the Skelly ship mostly on my side, I was fighting an uphill battle. It's as I like to say, if I have time to repair, so does my enemy. And with me playing solo against a 3-man crew, I was never able to apply enough pressure to make them slip. When my wheel was busted, on top of me leaking from every possible hole in my ship, there was no way for me to keep up the spiral. The best I could do was go straight in order to reset whilst they were anchored. For an experienced player, the win condition is to win the fight. But for many others, it would simply be survival. I had dealt a lot of damage to their ship, and the Skelly sloop was still around. If there was ever a chance for me to get away, it would be now. And as fate would have it, I got far away enough to dive for another raid. My ship, and by proxy my emissary flag, were saved. Now here's the thing, I could continue spamming Ashen wins raids until I eventually hit 1,000,000 gold, but reality is that I'm gonna have to continue fighting other ships one way or another. No matter how much I try, it would be disingenuous of me to suggest that you could always avoid enemy players. And if risk mitigation is no longer a concern, then there's one more thing I could rely on in order to make a lot of gold in a short period of time. And that is the Fort of the Damned. The FOTD is one of the best events in the game because at present it is the only one that can be activated by players. As long as you know how, you can do this as often as your heart desires. And okay, sure, under optimal circumstances, other methods could be more lucrative, but I mean, optimal circumstances weren't exactly what I was dealing with, and chances are they're not what you will be dealing with either. What's a little more risk of PvP in a challenge where I was being hunted down relentlessly anyway? So let me show you how to start a Fort of the Damned. The process is honestly quite simple. Just plop down a voyage for a Skull of Destiny, dig it up, and you're off to the races. If you are a pirate legend, which we are not. Meaning our only other option was getting the OG Ritual Skull, which you can conveniently find in a Skelly fleet. Oh god, hey, what's up guys? Personal space much? Why are they despawning? What is happening? Yeah, things were definitely not going according to plan. Usually I like to put fire on the top deck to take out the cannoneers, but them diving underwater to extinguish the flames definitely was a new move. Thankfully, I was not the only person dealing with this nonsense. I found another ship in the event with a very nice fella who was willing to team up. We made a deal that I would get to keep every skull and he would have the rest of the items. I was very happy to see a friendly face for once. Up until then, every single pirate I came across wanted to hunt me down, so finding somebody who wanted to help a new player was most assuredly very welcome. Also a tip for taking on galleons, make sure you aim for the lower deck first so they begin taking on water. The skeletons cannot bucket, but they can repair damage, so any upper deck shots you land will literally be useless until the bottom deck is full. It is worth mentioning that more ships partaking in the fleet event did mean that we had to sink more skeleton ships, but that guy was actually incredibly competent, and with that assistance at my back, I decided to do something rather unorthodox. I'm about to do something really stupid. What am I doing? I don't have a sword! No! No, why did I do that? Oh, please, 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 please. Oh, map table! Yeah, I was not kidding when I said I'm about to do something really stupid, but listen! Stealing cursed cannonballs from Skelly ships, especially powerful ones like Peace Balls, could be the difference maker between me winning or losing my FOTD treasure. Just that a sword to dash back to my ship could have been very useful. In the first place, I wasn't sure if this guy was actually gonna keep his end of the bargain, but he seemed nice enough and I didn't really have anything to lose besides my time. And my trust was certainly not misplaced. He did come around and let me have any skulls as well as mermaid gems, which was a massive boon to my emissary flag. But when we parted ways, I felt like this was cheating. I mean, listen. listen, coming across friendly players is not as impossible of a thing as the comment section might lead you to believe. But do I really want to rely on other people's help to complete my challenge? I felt like that will make this whole thing a lot less replicable for the rest of you guys. So before my alliance could sell any of their treasure, I decided to disband it and go back to him to return the loot so that I would not benefit from his work. It was definitely a bit of a weird conversation to suddenly return the loot he just gave me, but what was even more weird was to find out that this man, he just wanted to fish. You see, in dangerous waters, such as around skelly ships, you can get a very special type of fish, the battlegill. And wouldn't you know it, those same fish can be found around an active Fort of the Damned as well. Had I not shown myself as friendly, chances are he would have just sank my ship and continued fishing. But anyway, I just wasted a bunch of time for no gold, no reputation, and unfortunately, no ritual skull. Now, there is more than one way to get your hands on one of these, even if you're not a pirate legend, but for now, I decided to knock out a few more skeleton boss quests and simply hoped I would stumble upon one such item. That was great for my emissary flag as well as my gold pouch, and after a little while, I did find an Ashen Guardian. This randomly spawning variant of the Skelly Captain family will drop a key as well as a map to their chest, and lucky me, inside that chest, I found myself a ritual skull. The party was officially on. All I needed now was to collect every single Flame of the Damned to activate the event, something that the RGB Skull of Destiny can do on its own, unlike the OG ritual skull. I now had to perish at the hands of a variety of different threats on the Sea of Thieves and collect the flames from the fairies, saving them on my ship's lanterns. The first one I wanted to collect was the pink PvP flame, and something I failed to mention until now was that the fisherman was hiding on my ship the entire time, which now ended up working in my favor because I could simply ask him to send me to the ferry and collect the first flame. Next I got the purple flame from dying to a snake, the blue flame from being eaten by a shark, the red flame from standing in fire, and the white flame from, do it, coward! Hit me if you can! That. And finally, the green flame from dying to a skeleton, which would end up being rather ironic because we're going through this whole trouble just to turn a whole army of them into bone dust. With all the flames collected and the ritual skull in my possession, I was ready to activate the Fort of the Damned. Now, this event might seem fairly daunting at first, but it's actually incredibly straightforward. Just like the fleet got more difficult because more players were participating, the FOTD gets easier if you do it all on your own. I didn't mind our fisherman making use of this to get some battle gil, but I did ask him not to set foot on the island itself to make sure the difficulty does not get scaled upwards. But once the flames were delivered and the skull was put in place, it was time to get some treasure. Basically, this whole encounter is just like any other skeleton fort, except every skeleton that spawns will always be one of the shadow variety. To make them vulnerable, you will have to pick up the flame that corresponds to their color and then take them out. The grate below the lantern will light up to show you which color you'll need for any given wave. If you want to go the extra mile, you can shoot the feetsies of the gunpowder skeletons to claim their kegs for a stack to use at the end. The wave of stronghold gunpowder kegs should be enough to take him out in one fell swoop, even if it means you're biting the big one in the process. It is going to save a lot of time. And at last, I was ready to collect my treasure. But if you think you're safe now that the skeleton cloud above the event is gone, you'd be mistaken. The items inside the vault include Reaper chests, which will give away the fact that the fort has been cleared. There are also a bunch of kegs, which you could use for another round if you want to stack, but that would require more prep, which we're not gonna do. So the Reaper chests get buried to get rid of the marker, and the kegs get blown up so nobody could use them against me. Also, our fisherman got stuck inside a rock and requested saving, and since I would have had to find somebody else to give me the pink flame, and because he was just an all-around nice guy, I obviously got him out. I tossed all the loot down on a rock where I could easily harpoon it onto my ship, and now you might assume I was ready to sell my treasure, but you might have noticed that the loot inside the FOTD is a wild mix of stuff belonging to a variety of companies. And since only Order of Souls loot would get boosted by my emissary flag, I decided to hold onto my stack until Gold Rush Hour, which in hindsight I really wish I didn't do. Trust me when I say this, just go sell your loot. Don't get greedy like I do. Do not make the mistakes I made. I'm so undeserving of what is about to happen. Because I had another hour to kill until Gold Rush, I decided to take on another skelly fleet. The fisherman also decided to take his leave when his friend logged in and picked him up on his original vessel. I was now completely on my own, taking on the fleet when this happened. The game crashed. Close the damn game so I can restart it! You can tell that I was not a happy camper. Now, the game does offer you to reconnect to the server for what I believe to be about 5 minutes after you disconnect, but I had a bunch of holes in my ship at the time I crashed. Seconds felt like an eternity, and by the time I got back, my fate was sealed. The ship was sunk, the treasure was lost, and with it, my hopes of completing this challenge. Wasn't it for the fisherman and his friend? Now get this, when my ship sank, they swooped in and completed the scaly fleet in my stead. My own treasure had already sunk to the bottom of the ocean by the time they rolled up, but these kind-hearted individuals offered me to keep the loot. And I mean, yeah, I didn't want to take assistance from anybody else, but losing everything I worked towards because of a dumb crash? I was gonna accept a helping hand when it was offered to me. And honestly, I kind of like this as a message. I mean, yes, we are pirates. We're gonna be fighting each other, stealing from each other, and engaging in all sorts of tomfoolery. But sometimes we also cooperate. We help each other. We see a new player and decide, you know what, I had it rough when I tried to learn how to play, and I want to make sure that you have it easier, because I want you to love this game as much as I do, flaws and all. And that's why I decided to make this video in the first place. Make sure that you guys have it easier than I did when I first began playing. Arm you with all the knowledge you need to conquer this wondrous world and plunder its riches. And after 3 days of playing, 24 actual hours spent in the game, and a lot of help on the final stretch, we had done it. We finally reached 1 million gold on a brand new account. But hey, making gold is not the only thing you can do in this game. Among many other things are also story missions called Tall Tales, the best one of which, in my opinion, is the Shores of Gold series. If you want to watch me and my friends play through that entire thing, make sure to check out the card on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Make sure to check out gamersubs.gg/Cliff if you want to support my channel, and don't forget, I hope you guys have a day filled with riches on the sea, and until next time, peace.